You know, for over 40 years, there's been a war waged in the shadows between Iran, Israel, and the United States. It's a conflict that rarely speaks its name, fought through proxies, with cyber weapons. It's like this vast, silent machine humming just beneath the surface of everything we see in the news. But what happens when that machine finally gets dragged out into the light? What happens when the shadows just disappear?
To really get a handle on what's at stake in this whole 4-decade conflict, we're not going to start in the past. We're going to start in a hypothetical near future. We're going to ask one of the most serious questions in geopolitics today. What would a direct, coordinated military strike on Iran actually look like?
So, picture this. The date is February 28, 2020. The operation names are already in the system. And let's be clear, this isn't just some show of force. Here is brutally simple. This is a move designed to decapitate the Iranian regime in one single, overwhelming blow.
And what's really wild here is just how precise the goal is. We're not just talking about missiles aimed at military bases. No, they're dialed in on the absolute nerve center of the entire Iranian government. The #1 objective is political assassination. The idea is to make the regime collapse instantly from the very top down.
Now, to pull something like this off, you need some serious muscle. So 2 massive floating cities are moved right to Iran's doorstep. You've got the USS Abraham Lincoln in the Arabian Sea and the supercarrier USS Gerald in the Mediterranean. I mean, that is an incredible concentration of military power.
The attack itself would just be overwhelming. You'd see cities like Karaj, a major hub for industry, get hit. Qum, the ideological heart of the country, would be targeted to create this profound psychological shock. And of course, Isfahan, which is basically the crown jewel of Iran's nuclear and drone programs. That would be a top. The whole point is to create total systemic shock.
So this all begs a huge question, right? Devastating attack like this doesn't just happen out of nowhere. To understand how we even got to this brink, we have to rewind the clock. We have to go back to the one year that changed everything.
It all comes down to this one single year, 1979. Before this, the relationships between these countries were completely different. After this year, path to our 2026 scenario was basically set in stone. So let's take a look at how.
Kind of hard to even imagine now, but before 1979, Iran was arguably America's most important in the entire region. It was also a close non-Arab ally for it. The revolution didn't just change Iran, it completely flipped the entire geopolitical map of the Middle East upside down.
And the man at the center of this incredible change was Ayatollah Khamenei. After spending 15 years in exile, he came back to lead a huge popular uprising against the Shah, a monarch who had tried to force Western-style modernity on the country, often brutally and with the full backing of both Washington and Tel Aviv.
And make no mistake, the support for him was absolutely massive. This was not some fringe movement. When Khamenei returned, it's estimated that 10 million people poured into the streets of Tehran to greet him. To many, he wasn't just a political leader. He was seen as a man of God who was there to rescue the country.
And the break with the West was swift and it was violent. The U.S. Embassy was stormed, which led to that infamous 444-day hostage crisis, a story that really became a founding myth for the new regime. And in this incredibly powerful symbolic move, the Israeli diplomatic mission was ransacked and its keys were handed over to Yasser Arafat, the leader of the Palestine Liberation Organization.
So with the old relationships completely shattered, the conflict didn't just stop. Nope, it changed. It evolved. Iran quickly found itself bogged down in this brutal 8-year war with Iraq, which forced it to find a new way to fight its ideological enemies. It needed a new front line, and a whole new doctrine of warfare that would define its foreign policy for decades. And this one quote, well, it pretty much explains the entire strategy for the next 40 years. Khamenei knew he couldn't fight Israel directly while he was also fighting a devastating war with Iraq. So it was a deeply strategic call. First things first, they would just have to find another way, another place, to strike at their enemies.
And that new place was Lebanon. See, in 1982, when Israel invaded to try and crush the PLO, Iran saw a golden opportunity. They sent their elite Revolutionary Guards into Lebanon's Bekaa Valley. But they weren't there to fight directly. They were there to provide weapons, money, and expertise to help local Shiite militias form a brand new organization, Hezbollah. And that right there became the template for Iran's whole proxy strategy.
And Hezbollah introduced a tactic that absolutely stunned their enemies. Because they knew they couldn't win a fight, they pioneered what they called martyrdom operations, suicide attacks. The first really big one was in November of 1982 when a young man drove a car bomb straight into the Israeli military headquarters in Tyre, killing 91 soldiers. This brutal innovation completely changed the rules of the game, and the Shadow War, well, it had truly begun.
Okay, so let's jump back to our 2026 scenario. The tools of war today are just unimaginable back in 1982. So how in the world do you choreograph an attack on that massive scale with perfect split-second precision?
Well, the secret is a tactic called time on target. Just try to imagine it. Missiles fired deep in the ocean, bombs dropped from stealth jets high in the stratosphere, and cruise missiles launched from ships hundreds of miles away, mathematically choreographed to arrive at dozens of different targets across Iran at the exact same second. It's all designed for maximum shock and awe.
Okay, so the attack itself basically happens in 3 distinct waves. The goal of the first wave is simple. You blind the enemy. Tomahawk missiles fly low, hugging the terrain to take out radar sites. Once their eyes are gone, the second wave of fighter jets swoops in to hunt down mobile missile launchers. And only then, once the coast is clear, does the final wave arrive to hit the really deep, hardened targets like those nuclear facilities.
But before a single missile even hits its mark, the real first strike is digital. Electronic warfare injects a fire hose of false data into Iranian radar screens, just overwhelming them with chaos. Then, hundreds of tiny little decoys are launched that look exactly like a massive squadron of fighter jets. So while the Iranian air defenses are off chasing ghosts, the real stealth aircraft, like the F-35 and the B-2 Spirit, just slice right through the gaps, totally undetected.
But here's an attack like this, no matter how perfectly executed, is never really the end. It's just the start of the next, even bloodier chapter.
You can bet the Iranian response would be immediate and massive. Even with its command structure in total chaos, it still has thousands of ballistic missiles and drones ready to go. Operation Truthful Promise 4, and a huge wave of weapons screams toward U.S. bases and allies all across the region.
And the fallout is instantaneous. A U.S. base in the UAE gets hit. The Navy's 5th Fleet headquarters in Bahrain is targeted. Sirens are wailing over Tel Aviv and Jerusalem as missile defense systems light up the night sky. And just like that, the entire Middle East is plunged into a full-blown regional war. Which brings us to the final haunting question. From the revolution back in 1979, to the proxy wars of the 80s, all the way to the high-tech, hypothetical strikes of tomorrow, this entire conflict has become a kind of machine, right? Every single action has an equal and opposite reaction, with retaliation and escalation built right into its gears. The ultimate challenge isn't how to win the war, but